They traveled from North Carolina to Indiana on horseback, in wagons, and on foot. In 1817, the first black settlers bought land in the town of Paoli, known as Lick Creek. With only a few roads to travel and rough land to grow crops, they knew building a home here would not be easy. But they had a vision of hope for a new beginning. Donna Griffin first learned about Lick Creek from the Bloomington Sunday Herald Times in the early 1980s.
It talks about the fact that the Boy Scouts had discovered this cemetery.
Her grandmother showed her an article of Boy Scouts finding an old graveyard in Orange County, but something stood out to Donna.
It had her maiden name on it, Bond, Frances Bond. I said, "Oh, that's your name?" And she said, "Yeah, that's my dad's sister that's buried at the Little Africa Cemetery."
And after learning of her family's connection to the settlement,
I said, "I need to go check this place out."
She then contacted officials at the Hoosier National Forest and asked to visit. When the pioneers settled into the land of Lick Creek, they lived among a large group of Quakers. The group of abolitionists believed in treating blacks with dignity and respect. The Quakers sold land with one another and exchanged crops, and according to the Indiana State Museum's curator, Bill Wepler, they formed more than just a community.
Community wasn't like a city block where you had people living each other. They were neighborhoods, and it was what pulls people together in common within that neighborhood.
After Indiana became a state in 1816, other black communities like Lyle Station in Gibson County and Roberts Settlement in Hamilton began to form around the state.
A number of these communities, not all of them, grew up adjacent to or well within the influence of Quaker areas, which would support them.
Many of the residents survived by working as farmers, builders, or teachers, and they raised livestock and grew crops near their homes.
They most likely had a kitchen garden where they grew vegetables for their own consumption.
But with racial tension moving from the South to the North in the years before the Civil War, new laws threatened African Americans. Laws like the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 allowed for slave owners to enter into any state of the Union in search of escaped slaves. That included Lick Creek.
People moving in that haven't fought there, now coming up, their chance to look around, see land. They don't want to see successful people.
Just 1 year later, in 1851, the new Indiana state constitution required that all blacks living in the state register with county authorities. By registering, settlers avoided the risk of having their freedom papers lost, destroyed, or even stolen. Nearly 40 years after the first settlers arrived, records show that 260 free African Americans were registered as residents.
We gotta get a man on the point. Who's gonna be the point man?
In 1989, Donna and her family got the chance to visit Lick Creek.
It was just so amazing to stand on the ground that my ancestors stood on. And by that time, I had a lot more information about them.
But while visiting, they came across a sign that called the settlement Little Africa.
And I was wondering, well, how did they come up with that name? My grandmother referred to this burial ground as Patty's Garden. That's what her family called it.
They also came across a marker that described the settlers as former escaped slaves. But that's not true, says Donna.
As far as my record and my research showed, they were free people of color when they came to Indiana.
It led the family to contact state officials in order to get the information corrected. Angela Doyle began working at the Hoosier National Forest in 1992. And in 2000, the Hoosier National Forest and the Indiana State Museum worked together to excavate the home of Elias and Nancy Roberts, two successful residents of Lick Creek.
Elias Roberts deeded the land that this sits on. We found artifacts such as buttons, clay pipe fragments, slate pencils, everyday items.
Their discoveries gave them a deeper look into the settlement's history. Researchers believe that the Roberts family held school within their house to teach residents how to read and write. Another discovery was evidence of what appeared to be a two-story African Methodist Episcopal church. But today, all that remains is a small pile of rocks.
It's pretty unspectacular, a rock pile in the woods, but it used to be something very substantial and meant a lot to a lot of people.
In the summer of 2014, Donna and her family got the chance to revisit Lick Creek. It had been 25 years since her last visit, and Donna didn't expect to see what she found.
It was totally different. I didn't recognize it. The Little Africa sign was gone, and there was a new sign there that said Robertson Thomas Cemetery. And I said, oh, amazing. The stone monument with the incorrect information was gone, and the sign that talked about the runaway slaves being buried there, that was gone.
Angela understood how important this visit was for Donna and her family.
She came from California to put flowers on the graves of her loved ones. Even an archaeological site in the middle of the woods was very important to her.
Now, nearly 200 years later, all that remains is the Robertson Thomas Cemetery. No one knows exactly why these early pioneers left so suddenly in 1862, but state documents show that 7 residents sold their land in that year, and as the years continued, even more began to leave.
They stayed there if they wanted to, but if there were better opportunities, because things were developing and there was more work in other areas.
Angela believes that the Civil War ramping up influenced many to leave out of fear of racial violence.
It was probably a very scary time, and I think they left because they were fearful, and it was time to go. They were surviving.
While Bill believes the land played a major role. There really wasn't much there for their kids. I mean, there wasn't going to be a working farm to inherit because of the land that was going away.
Today, the story of Lick Creek continues to unfold, and individuals like Bill, Angela, and Donna are committed to remembering these nearly forgotten Hoosiers.
We want anyone else coming up there to know that they're not forgotten. Somebody cares about these folks.
So that the legacy of Lick Creek never fades away.